She walked with her head down, clutching a plastic container filled with leftover food. The night was cold, and the city streets seemed endless. Her shoes were worn out, her coat too thin for the biting wind. Each step was heavy, but she kept going, because home was not a place. It was a broken shelter at the edge of town. Her name was Emily. She was 21, but hardship had carved lines into her face that made her look older. Once, she had been a college student with bright hopes. But when her mother died and her father abandoned the family, she became the sole caretaker of her younger brother. Dreams had to be put away. Survival became the only goal. Every day, she worked shifts at a diner. She cleaned tables, scrubbed floors, and sometimes begged for extra hours. But tips were rare and wages barely enough to cover rent. What she saved, she carried home in plastic containers, leftover food that would become dinner for her brother. This was her reality. But what Emily never knew was that one ordinary night, when she carried home those leftovers, her life would cross paths with someone who could change it forever. To that night, across town, a man named Richard was driving home with his son, Michael. Richard was a CEO, wealthy, respected, known in business circles as a man of precision and discipline. Yet his private life was marked by loss. His wife had passed away years ago, leaving him to raise Michael alone. The boy, now 10, was thoughtful, observant, and carried a gentleness that his father sometimes felt he lacked. Their car rolled through the dimly lit streets. Richard was thinking about a late meeting. Michael, however, was looking outside, watching the world pass by through the cold glass of the window, and that was when he saw her. A girl walking with her head low, carrying a container close to her chest, as if it held something more valuable than gold. Her pace was slow, her shoulders hunched. She looked fragile, but determined. Michael leaned forward. His small voice broke the silence. "Daddy, it's her." Richard glanced up, surprised by the sudden urgency in his son's tone. "Who?" he asked. "The girl," Michael whispered, eyes fixed on Emily. "The one I told you about. From the diner. She gave me pie last week, even when I didn't have enough money. That's her." Richard slowed the car. He remembered. His son had mentioned a girl who had been kind to him when he'd visited the diner with a friend. She had covered his short bill with her own tip money. At the time, Richard had brushed it off as nothing. But now, seeing her like this, the scene took on a new weight. Emily kept walking, unaware that eyes were following her. She turned down an alley, clutching the food tighter. Richard pulled over. The next part of her story unfolded in silence, like a film no one had scripted. Richard watched her disappear into the shadows. A mix of instincts and unease pushed him forward. Against the habits of a man used to calculated choices, he opened the car door. Michael followed, his small hand gripping his father's coat. They stepped into the alley. What they found was not a home, but a makeshift shelter of cardboard and old blankets tucked beside a broken fence. Emily's brother, barely 13, waited there. His eyes lit up when he saw the food. He grabbed it quickly, too hungry to hide his desperation. Emily smiled faintly at him, though exhaustion pulled at her face. She sat down beside him, pulling the coat tighter. Richard froze. He had expected poverty, maybe hardship, but not this. Children surviving in silence, invisible to the world. Michael whispered again, "Daddy, we have to help her." What came next was a clash between instinct and caution. Richard was a man used to contracts, not charity. He did not know how to step into the lives of strangers. But Michael's words pierced through his hesitation. He thought of his late wife, who had once told him that wealth meant nothing if it never touched another soul. That night, Richard made a decision. He approached them. Emily looked up, startled, clutching her brother protectively. Her eyes carried both fear and pride. She was not used to kindness, especially from strangers in expensive coats. Richard's words were simple. "You helped my son once. Now let me help you." Emily shook her head. Pride burned in her chest. She had endured so much already. She did not want pity. But Michael stepped closer, holding out his hand to her brother, who looked too thin for his age. Something pure passed between the children, an understanding beyond words, and Emily realized sometimes accepting help is also an act of strength. The following weeks reshaped everything. Richard arranged safe housing for Emily and her brother. He helped enroll her brother back into school. He offered Emily a stable job, not charity, but a position at his company's cafeteria. It gave her dignity, a chance to work and rebuild. Still, the transition was not easy. Emily carried years of struggle within her. At night, she sometimes cried, remembering her mother's words about holding on through storms. She worried about owing too much, about being a burden. But each time doubt crept in, Michael's smile reminded her of the night in the alley. The night a boy's voice had said, "Daddy, it's her." As weeks turned into months, an unspoken truth revealed itself. This was not just about money or opportunity. It was about humanity. Richard saw his own pain reflected in Emily's resilience. He had lost a partner. She had lost parents. Both had been forced into roles they never chose: protector, provider, survivor. And in helping her, he began to heal parts of himself. Emily's brother thrived. For the first time in years, he wore clean clothes, carried books to school, and spoke about dreams of becoming an engineer. Emily herself began attending evening classes again, determined to finish what she had once started. Her hands, once rough from endless labor, now held pens and textbooks. And Michael? He watched it all with quiet pride. In his heart, he knew that his simple words had changed not just one life, but many. 2 months later, on a bright spring morning, Emily stood at the company cafeteria where she now worked. She served food with dignity, no longer leftovers carried in plastic containers. She saw Richard and Michael enter. Her brother ran up to them, laughing, carefree for the first time in years. Emily paused, her eyes welling with gratitude. She had carried scraps once. Now she carried hope. And all of it had begun because a little boy looked out of a car window and recognized kindness when he saw it. Life does not always give second chances, but sometimes one act of compassion becomes the thread that stitches broken lives back together. Emily never forgot the hunger, the cold, the nights of despair. But she also never forgot the moment Michael's voice cut through the silence of the city. "Daddy, it's her." Before we close this story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What did this story mean to you? Please share your feelings in the comments below. In the end, Emily's story was not about wealth nor about survival alone. It was about recognition, the moment when one human being sees another, not as a shadow on the street, but as a soul worth saving. And sometimes, that recognition begins with the smallest of voices.